Good afternoon, Eastern Washington. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from the capital of free but very smoky Washington, Spokane Valley. Brought to you once again by the Committee to Elect Matt Shea, Republican, and the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news. And once again, it's not about right or left. It's about right and wrong. Right and wrong. And we need to do the hard work to implement freedom because our hope is not in man but in Jesus Christ. And we can't end in prayer. We must also move to action. And as Exodus 15:3 says, the Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Are we warriors? By the way, I'm going to have one of the premier warriors on the show today. Brigitte Gabriel from Act for America is looking really forward to her being on. But I want to move into something first about being a warrior. Means sometimes you have to be involved in confrontation. And I just had this happen to a group of friends of mine just before I came on the radio show. Somebody had been holding something in for a long time, and they're on a text message string, and they've been holding it in for a long time, and then they just verbally barfed all over everyone on the string and then just left. Okay, that is not biblical confrontation. If you have an offense with somebody, Matthew 18 says you're supposed to go to that person individually and privately, not barfing on a public string. Then you're supposed to go with a witness. If they don't listen, then you're supposed to involve the church. Now, typically, when it involves leaders, you should take a witness at the start. In biblical confrontation, we don't do it very well anymore. Because if you do it well, it should be solved at that initial level unless somebody is totally set in whatever they're doing, in the sin that they're involved in. And they are not willing to change. And it doesn't mean we go and look for sin in everybody else's lives. It means it's something that is not just affecting us, because sometimes we can pray for people that have hurt us. We can forgive them and take care of it. But really, where people, through what they're doing, can hurt a lot of other people. And I've run into this in the political realm, and it's kind of been a good thing where information comes out where it affects a large majority of people. And where it has the potential, things like corruption, things like deceiving people about something that is happening, things like calling out when, missile launches are close. There are things that really affect a lot of people, and that's how we need to start looking at some of these things as Christians. And when we go into these situations, pray the first prayer, remove my motivations, Lord, get rid of my motivations, replace it with yours. I want to see reconciliation. Pray for a spirit of reconciliation over this conversation, and go into it with the right heart. And what I see oftentimes now is that people who don't have all the facts, people who don't, let me back up, that think they know, but they really don't know everything. They don't have a good perspective. They're seeing it through a short-range lens instead of a long-range lens, through a bigger picture lens. And they miss those things. It can easily lead you down a road where you think you're right and you're really not. And you always have to leave open that you don't know what you don't know and have that humility. So when you go into a situation like this, you may not know all the facts of something. Somebody may explain and be like, oh, I totally didn't understand that. I didn't know that was part of it. And then the situation's resolved. But verbally barfing on a public string is not, and then claiming you're doing so based on biblical principle is just, it's not. And as Christians, we need to learn how to confront people. And look, there are some people that just will not reconcile. It doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter how many times you sit down with them. They just will not reconcile. They'll continue to lie about you publicly. They'll continue to go after people around you publicly. They'll continue to besmirch your reputation privately. There's nothing you can really do for those folks, but you can control your own thoughts and words, and you can forgive them. And that's what we're supposed to do as Christians, just forgive them. Pray the Lord would turn their heart. And I've found in a lot of cases he does. Sometimes they don't even listen to the Lord. But those that claim they are listening to the Lord and are in the Word and are praying, the Lord will turn their hearts and will take care of the situation. Because he's the great healer. He's the great reconciler. So I thought I would share that with you all today because it's an important lesson to learn as we get into the days ahead and I talk about some of the things that are happening in the news. We're going to have more and more confrontation. And we've got to do these things in a biblical manner and not just hold it in and hide it and then just, boom, spring it on somebody else. Well, that's not right. You're just as wrong as the person that you are supposed to be confronting. All right, now I'm going to move into your daily intelligence briefing on the international front, the Mideast, Kurdish independence vote for northern Iraq, September 25th. Going to have some profound implications. And Donald Trump now changing direction in Afghanistan and sending more troops into Afghanistan. And listen to some of his generals there, and I hope they go in to win and get out. But if they're going, and Trump has said this, they're not going into nation build, but if they go in there with the idea that they're going to be there for 20 years, I think that is not just unwise. I think it's folly. We need to go in. We need to win. We need to come home. Also on the international front, North Korea testing its sixth nuclear device, claiming a hydrogen bomb. And based on the size of the earthquake and also some of the readings that at least I've seen, it was about 10 times bigger than the last one. North Korea also claiming that it will EMP, electromagnetic pulse, the United States. Now, there is a lot of misinformation out there about electromagnetic pulse. The United States conducted a test called Starfish Prime in the early 1960s, and then the Russians also conducted, I believe they were called the Project K tests over Kazakhstan. Now, what they learned was there is effect on the electrical infrastructure depending on the type of nuclear warhead and also on how high it's detonated and what the yield is. So you need to take a look. You can Google it online. Go take a look and get yourself informed about the Starfish Prime test, but also more importantly, because the Russians were far more extensive in their testing of electromagnetic pulses over Kazakhstan. And we have to understand that this is not some, made-up test, but these Soviet Project K nuclear tests, were done very methodically and specifically to see what the actual effect would be on infrastructure, on radios, etc. And there are a couple great articles out there. Future Science has one that's really good about what the potential problems are, especially if it is an intended EMP weapon and not just a nuclear detonation. There's a difference between the two. One actually will reflect the EMP pulse back into space if it is too high of a yield. So if it's a lower yield, actually more EMP can make it to the ground. And so North Korea is coming close to that. Also, some of our intelligence sources, again, friendly to Patriot Radio, but not friendly to the Spokesman Review, the Socialist Review, are saying that it looks like we're in another window where they could potentially launch at Guam between now and September 9th. That said, we have to ask the question why. Why all of a sudden all this ramp up? What does China get out of it? Would China ever let North Korea do that? So, again, it looks like we're, based on some intelligence, looks like we're in that window again for them to launch. We just need to, ask the question why. Why is this happening? And also, with everything going on that I'm going to be talking about right now, there is so many reasons that we all should be prepared just as a matter of daily life and course, because we love our neighbors. I'm going to move down next to Venezuela. The opposition has gone eerily quiet in Venezuela. Some are saying that they are planning and training right now for an open civil war down there, and it looks like it's already descended into civil war as Maduro tries to become unofficial dictator in Venezuela. Also on the international front, the suspected attack on the embassy in Cuba. Now, more people have been injured in this thing. A suspected sonic attack on embassy personnel in Cuba. And it's being confirmed now in more mainstream media sources, but no response from the administration. And it's just interesting. I'm going to keep my eyes on this and keep reporting on it because this has, some profound impacts. If there wasn't indeed an attack on U.S. embassy personnel, that's an act of war, folks. Also on the international front, in the United Kingdom, young Christian girl removed from her home, English-speaking home, even though her grandparents were ready, willing, and able to take her and put into a hardline Muslim home, and essentially told that she needed to learn Arabic. A very disturbing story out of the United Kingdom and a cautionary tale for us here in the United States. Also, on the national front, in Texas, Hurricane Harvey, 100,000 homes destroyed, $120 billion plus in damages. And oh, by the way, the media poo-pooed somebody that came out ahead of time and said, hey, look, this is going to be one of the most massive disasters we've had in Texas history. We need to be ready for it. 100,000 homes are in jeopardy, and ended up being right on the money, but was poo-pooed by the media up front. So again, the media not being accurate and thinking they know best. How many people didn't prepare because they listened to the media instead of other folks that were knowledgeable? Who knows? But it brings up a interesting question with Hurricane Irma. Now officially the strongest hurricane on record, 185 mile an hour plus winds. 185 mile an hour plus winds. Moving on Puerto Rico, which has already declared a state of emergency, headed toward Florida. Some are predicting it will go up the East Coast. But again, it could hit and be one of the strongest hurricanes to hit the U.S. mainland if it continues the way it's going. Many people preparing. I think the Florida governor, Rick Scott, has called up the National Guard down there. They're preparing for a state of emergency as well. And then you have the U.S. Virgin Islands, which went and not just prepared for an emergency, but Governor Kenneth Mapp signed an emergency order allowing the seizure of private guns and ammunitions by the National Guard. Now, many of you here would never think that that would happen in America, and there it is. The U.S. Virgin Islands, the Governor Kenneth Mapp signing the ability of the National Guard to seize guns and ammunition from private citizens because of a hurricane. That does not make any sense at all. Because we heard about looting in Katrina, that same looting happened in Harvey, and how much death was prevented by people being armed and chasing off looters. Unbelievable. And that was on the Drudge Report. You can go check it out yourself. Also on the national front, Southern Poverty Law Center and the About Time Department sued for defamation and other claims. Finally, somebody's taking them on and calling them out for who they are. By the way, J.P. Morgan Chase and Apple give a ton of money to the SPLC. Also, the SPLC has been accused of moving millions offshore. You'd ask and wonder why you would move money if you're a nonprofit to the Caymans. That's weird. So a lot more probably going to be coming out of this lawsuit. We're going to keep you updated on that. And this just goes to show somebody today, actually, I saw on Facebook, actually tried to cite the Southern Poverty Law Center as a source. You can't even do that anymore. They're so totally and thoroughly discredited. You can't do that anymore. And so we're just going to keep calling out the SPLC, and they are now being exposed for who they are. Also on the national front, Antifa unmasked. 13 people arrested after what happened down in the riots in Berkeley here a week and a half ago. And interestingly enough, they weren't college-age kids. Why? Because they're professional agitators, and this went on to prove it, I think. 13 people with an average age of 30 years old. So you know that there are forces inside the United States aligned with communism who are intentionally trying to foment unrest. And you have to ask the question, are communist agents in the United States intentionally trying to divide the country to make us weaker? Has that ever been done before? Yes, it has. In fact, that was one of the strategies by the KGB. And so when we look at some of these things, understand that these are not just spontaneous people that are just a little ignorant. These are very well planned, very well orchestrated, with a strategic objective. And we must treat them like they are, and that is enemies of the Constitution, because they say they're enemies of the Constitution. Also on the national front, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and this is in WorldNet Daily, announced that the Obama-era Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival policy, in other words, the DACA policy, which gave temporary amnesty to thousands of illegal immigrants, is coming to an end under the Trump administration. And many are heralding that. And I have to say yes, because if you are for the rule of law, then that should never exist, because it is a slap in the face of everyone else that has come in legally and waited, sometimes under horrific conditions, to get U.S. permission to come here. I've heard about it in the Slavic community over and over again, and it's a slap in the face, because it's not the rule of law when you allow some temporary amnesty and allow folks in. It just isn't. And there is no counter argument to that. Everybody always tries to use the compassionate argument. What about the compassion for the people who are already waiting in line? What about their families? What about the families that they had to leave back in their home countries, that are still suffering persecution, that are still suffering under a lack of food and a lack of money? What about them? Nobody ever talks about them. On the regional front, Washington State governor has now declared a state of emergency in regards to the wildfires. Everybody can see it outside. I mean, this is the worst I've ever seen it. This is really the worst I've ever seen. I've lived in Spokane. I was born here. Worst I've ever seen it. And it doesn't look like it's going to get any better here anytime soon, although we need to start praying into these things. But understand this. You have two massive hurricanes that are, one has already hit the U.S., one looks like it's going to hit the U.S., and then you have massive wildfires. And you have a dictator in North Korea. A convergence of events? Interesting. All right, also on the regional front, Evergreen State College reaping what it sows. So after all the shenanigans, their enrollment's down. Looks like they're going to fall $2 million short, and they're going to have to lay off some folks at Evergreen State College. What goes around comes around, apparently. And no matter how socialist you are, you can't outrun the laws of economics and supply and demand. You just can't, no matter how hard you try. Also on the regional front, Dan Love, the guy in charge down at Bundy Ranch, even though an investigation found that he very likely violated the law, will not be prosecuted. And yet, some folks at the Bundy Ranch are going for their third trial, because the first two were hung juries. Interesting. I hope the Trump administration, and we're going to continue to push this, the Trump administration to weigh in and pardon. I know the Coalition of Western States is seeking a meeting with the Trump administration to get a pardon for those folks. This is it's just outrageous. They are in jail for well over a year. And now a third trial. Government, what, are you going to just keep trying them? Unbelievable. On the local front, Spokane Valley update. We Believe We Vote. They have come out with their recommendations, and one of the interesting recommendations I'm going to talk about is in the Spokane Valley City Council. So, We Believe We Vote. Chris Jackson versus Rod Higgins. Chris Jackson didn't even want to interview with We Believe We Vote. Why? Because he's a progressive, obviously. Then you have Spokane Valley City Council race position 2 with Caleb Collier and Brandy Peets. And Brandy Peets, to her credit, did interview, but she basically got a 0. Caleb Collier got 5 stars. So why again? Because their ideology is progressive. It doesn't matter if they try to call themselves a Republican. And by the way, if there's a Republican organization out there that is endorsing Brandy Peets, you are endorsing a progressive. You are betraying the values and principles that you say you believe. So, and we're going to hold those organizations accountable for this kind of stuff, because then it gets more interesting. Spokane Valley City Council position 4, Ben Wick only gets 3 stars. Ed Pace, obviously a pastor, you're getting 5 stars. Why? Because Ben Wick has a progressive ideology. Then you get to Angie Bean and Pam Haley, again, 5 stars to 1 star. Mike Munch, 5 stars to Linda Thompson's 2 stars. Why are those people getting it? Because they have a progressive ideology. It is not an ideology of conservatism. It is not an ideology that understands the Judeo-Christian underpinnings of our country, and especially this area in Spokane Valley. So if you want to keep Spokane Valley conservative, vote for the current council. Also on the local front, Rob Chase, still up for county commissioner. He was the number 1 pick of the precinct committee officers. And if you want to email, you can email Al French at aFrench@SpokaneCounty.org and weigh in on that and tell him that you want him to pick Rob Chase. Also on the local front, and if you want to talk to Josh Kearns as well, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, Jay Kearns at SpokaneCounty.org as well. Let him know what you think. Send him an email. And lastly, on the local front, the Democrats here rocked again by allegations in the PDC, and now sexual assault allegations against the statewide party have come out. It was reported actually by the Spokesman Review, and also a WSU student leader as well in a separate incident. So keep your eyes on this, and we are starting to see the Democrats attack Republicans back here in Washington, filing PDC complaints across the board, some of which are pretty ridiculous. And you're going to see that happen. It's this kind of, they feel tit for tat that they're trying to do right now, so keep your eye on that. And that is the briefing. Remember, the antidote to dependency and socialism is to be a God-fearing, self-reliant, freedom-loving American. Thank you to everybody that has been praying for Patriot Radio. And make sure you go to Facebook/Patriot Radio US, like the page, share it with your friends and family. And if you want to support the campaign and the show, go to VoteShay, SHEA.com, VoteShay.com. And thank you to everybody that has been helping us stay on the air. Couldn't do it without you. Well, my guest today is Brigitte Gabriel, president of Act for America and author of They Must Be Stopped. Brigitte, it is an honor to have you on the show. I hope you're doing well, and I hope everything in your life is being a blessing to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I am delighted to be with you.
Well, it looks like we don't have her on yet, so are you on, Brigitte?
Yes.
Yeah, there you are. Yes.
Yes, I said I'm delighted to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you on. I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this show for a while. I'm glad you could make it on. So how is everything going with you?
Thank you. Everything's going great. We are preparing for our day of action this Saturday. So I literally just left the office. We've been working on that. A lot of exciting things. You know, the grassroots are waking up, and we're excited to take our country back and make a difference.
Amen. Well, you've been on the front lines of not only alerting but educating Americans to the threats that we face. So what's the purpose of what you're doing in this day of action this weekend? And also, what are the threats we should be paying attention to as Americans, especially red-blooded Americans up here in the Northwest of the United States?
Oh, my goodness. There are so many challenges facing our nation right now, but I have to tell you, the thing that we are struggling with right now is freedom of speech. In our country today, you are unable to exercise your freedom of speech because, to give you a perfect example, we were supposed to have rallies this coming weekend, nationwide rallies to commemorate September 11th. Remember, this is coming up on the weekend of September 11th Memorial. And to celebrate America's exceptionalism and to say never again, not under our watch. We want secure borders. We want vetted refugees. We want to put America's security first. We want to defeat ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We want to make sure there is respect for law and order, our military and our first responders. And Matt, I have to tell you, the sad part is after organizing rallies in 67 cities across America in 36 states, we had to cancel because the Antifa thugs and the extreme left started sending us death threats, threatening to mow down our people, and all we wanted was people coming out with their American flags, having a picnic downtown on a Saturday, waving their flags, celebrating America's exceptionalism, and remembering those who died as victims of terror. And for that, Antifa threatened to come out and mow down our people. So the threat today that we are facing as patriotic Americans, if you are a patriotic American, if you are a freedom-loving American, if you value our Judeo-Christian foundation and our values, you are under attack today because the left is trying to silence you. And I believe that what the left is doing right now to our freedom of speech should be so alarming to every single American. If we can be united on one issue, it will be the issue of defending our right to gather together and exercise our freedom of speech in our country.
Hey, man, I was actually really looking forward to speaking over there in Seattle, and it just was so unfortunate that it got that bad that people had to stay home. That's not American. You know, you can disagree with somebody, but you better darn well be willing to risk your life and defend somebody's ability to say what they're saying, even though you disagree with it.
Oh, right. And this is what is so sad in our country. You know, you used to hear about countries in Europe or in the Middle East where people are afraid to come out and say something. But to think that this is going to be happening in America, and for us as a national security organization, and, you know, we're not on the left, we're not on the right, we focus only on national security, we don't get involved in any other issues. And the fact that on the weekend of September 11th, we had to take precautions because the left is so extreme. This should be alarming to every citizen. But here's the good news, Matt. You know, when there is a will, there is a way. What we are doing is literally we are having this weekend, we're bringing the nation together with an unprecedented technology where we are doing a virtual rally where everybody will be able to log in live to our website and it will be like broadcasting live stream as if you're calling a talk radio, but instead of calling a talk radio, you'll be able to call a television station, basically, and appear live on television from your cell phone and speak about why we need to defend America, why we need to secure our borders, why we need to vet refugees, etc. So that's what we're working on. It's going to be live rally, live streaming on our website from 12 noon Eastern to 3 p.m. So that will be 9 a.m. Pacific your time, because we wanted to make sure that all Americans want to be able to participate, so people can join us in a day of action. We have instructions of writing letters to the editors. We have an official letter to President Trump to secure the nation. We have an official letter to the leadership of Congress. So I encourage people who are listening right now, put it on your calendar. Go to our website this Saturday from 12 noon to 3 p.m. in the afternoon to actforamerica.org and join us and millions of other Americans for a rally that will be conducted simultaneously nationwide with your engagement with other Americans from sea to shining sea.
Amen. Sea to shining sea, and Antifa can't really do much about that. The thugs cannot stop something like that. That's just a brilliant idea. And Brigitte, I got to ask you, where is this coming from? Where is this leftist thuggery coming from? Because it really has been amplified in the last 6 months. When I was growing up, I don't ever remember this happening in America. Even when people vehemently disagreed about going to war or something, I just don't remember it getting to thuggery.
Right. But this is what's happening right now. And, I was reading articles that actually some of the people behind Antifa, the founders of Antifa, are basically school teachers. And so, which even makes it even worse to think that in America, I mean, I saw some of the pictures of the teachers who are involved with Antifa, and to think that in America, middle school teachers teaching our teenagers are basically behind such an anarchist, such a fascist, communist, socialist a movement in our country that's silencing freedom of speech, that is unacceptable. And again, that leads us to why we on the right side of history, the right side of our country, those of us who love our country, those of us who believe that our country was founded on Judeo-Christian values, need to wake up, need to come together, need to become active. It's not enough anymore to sit and listen to the radio. Listening to the radio is entertainment. For those people who are listening right now, if you listen to this talk show and don't take action and don't go to actforamerica.org and get involved, you might as well be watching Dancing with the Stars, because you have just been entertained. Education is important, but education without action is not sufficient. Education must be coupled with action. And we named the organization, Matt, Act for America. Not think about America, not wish for America, not hope for America, not pray for America. You can do all the above, and you should. But without action, nothing happens. We named the organization Act for America. So I hope everyone listening to us right now that you would join us. Go to our website, actforamerica.org, and sign up as a member. Join us. Become a part of a movement taking back our country and standing up for our Judeo-Christian principles and the foundation by which this country was founded upon.
Now, I really appreciate the fact you're the largest grassroots national security organization in the country, and you have really been on the forefront of not just educating people about the threat, especially from radical Islam, but also the actual infiltration that has occurred and what people can do to take action. And up here in Washington, based on some of the things that you did, we were able to literally ban the creation of Sharia courts. We were able to ban also the implementation of Sharia law through foreign court orders. And that was that had a lot to do with you at Act for America.
Well, I have to say a lot to do with you as well. And I want to tell people we actually honored you at our national conference and gave you an award because we need people like you on the front lines. And we need people like us to join us. Though, we cannot do it alone. We need everybody to work together. We need everybody to make the phone calls, to write the letters, to talk to their elected officials, and to stand up. And I have to point something out to you. The one thing we learned from our rally that we just had 3 months ago, Matt, especially in Seattle, Washington, in the area up there, is that a lot of people who showed up were not registered voters, which I found shocking, because we need every patriotic American who is listening to us right now, who feels passionate about this issue. If you're not registered to vote, we need you to register to vote. That is so important, because not only we need you as a voice affecting your community and our nation, we want you voting in major election and presidential elections and any election, and we also want you making phone calls and influencing your elected officials and letting them know that, listen, I'm a registered voter and I vote, and this is why I'm calling you as your constituent to be able to speak about this issue or that issue. You are more effective as a constituent who is engaged politically than anything else. You're more powerful than any lobbyist sitting on Capitol Hill, because you are the voter and you have a sphere of influence in your base. So we want people to become engaged. We want them active. This is very important. And you mentioned about our work to stop Sharia law. We have introduced that bill, American Laws for American Courts, across the nation. And I'm proud to tell you, Matt, that we have passed that bill in 13 states, Texas being the last state that passed that bill. And we are introducing it this upcoming legislative session, in another 10 states. So things are moving. It's amazing when people come together and work together, we can make a difference.
Well, and I would take that. So we have 13 states. We got to get the rest of the states on board. Why? And this is part of what you talk about in your book, They Must Be Stopped. Why is this important to stop the march of Sharia law here in America?
Because we are watching what is happening in Europe. And if Europe is anything, it is a preview as to what's coming to the United States. Right now, Europe is 10 years ahead of America. Look how far Europe has deteriorated. Europe has become Eurabia. We are starting to see the same signs happen in America. And we want Americans engaged now before it is too late to turn the ship around. In Europe, by the time the Europeans wake up or walk up, it's too late to turn the ship around. Yeah, you know the theory about boiling the frog. If you throw frog in boiling water, the frog immediately jumps out because he can sense the water is hot, and he still has his strength to jump out. But if you want to boil a frog, put him in a pot of cold water and turn on the fire. You will be able to cook the frog, because by the time the frog realizes that the water is hot, the frog is too weak to even jump out. Europe is at stage 4 cancer. America is at stage 2 cancer. We can still heal our body and get the cancer out, but we've got to wake up now and do what we need to do, whatever necessary, to protect our country and get the cancer out of our system.
Now, in the Holy Land Foundation trial, it was very clearly established, as a matter of fact, in law, all the lists of the Muslim Brotherhood here in America, all the organizations that were affiliates of the Muslim Brotherhood. Trump has not yet declared the Muslim Brotherhood officially a terrorist organization for purposes of inside the United States. What is your insight into what's happening in Washington, D.C. on this issue, and what else can be done really to identify the true terror threat here in America?
Oh, what a great question. You know, Matt, we have been working very hard on designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. And we were hoping the president will get to it, very shortly after he was elected. But then, of course, with the development in North Korea, it put everything in the back burner. And what we are seeing right now is that there are forces within the State Department that are telling the president, we do not want to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization because you have a lot of countries where the Muslim Brotherhood is operating and they are peaceful, and therefore we don't need to worry about them, because we do not want to alienate these other countries. And what we are saying in America is that we already know, based on the Holy Land Foundation trial, which was, for those who are not familiar with it, the largest terrorism financing trial ever in the history of the United States, where our government handed down 108 guilty verdicts to Muslim American and Muslim American organizations raising money in the United States to the tune of millions and sending it to the Middle East to support terrorism. Now, in the Muslim Brotherhood, in the trial, our government presented as evidence the Muslim Brotherhood plan, which is a 100-year plan for radical Islam to infiltrate and dominate the West and establish an Islamic government on earth. As also in the plan, they have a plan for the destruction of the United States. In the plan for the destruction of the United States, in the last page, the Muslim Brotherhood lists 29 front Islamic organizations set up in the United States for the sole purpose of destroying America from within. It is because of that we want to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, so we can go after the front organizations set up in America to destroy America, so we can designate them by extension, so we can render them ineffective and cannot operate within the United States. That's why that designation is so important. Actually, at our upcoming national conference, Matt, which you attended in the past, this year we have a special session about designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. And for more information about our national conference, for those who wish to attend in Washington, D.C., it's happening next month, October 2nd and 3rd. People can go to our website for more information, actforamerica.org. I hope people can join us. It is imperative right now that we communicate to our elected officials why they need to stand behind the president and designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization and start protecting our country.
As part of that, so let's say nothing happens at the national level. What can be done at the state level and the local level to recognize this threat for what it is?
Well, we are mobilizing people into groups and chapters. As you very well know, and I spoke before, you're familiar with our chapter system. Right now, instead of calling them chapter, we're calling them group. A lot of activists who want to make a difference on the local level. I encourage you to join our activist model. If you go on our website, actforamerica.org, and become an activist, we have free tips for you and tools and slides and PowerPoint presentations and how you can make a difference in your own local community, how you can form your own group made out of your close friends and associates, your Sunday group, your Bible study group, you know, whatever group you belong to. You can put a small group together, and then you can go over the tips and proposals that we recommend in your local community. For example, we had one of our group leaders in Nebraska let us know that their city council is meeting in just a couple weeks to introduce a bill in the state about legislating hate, about hate speech in the state. Now, without us having a group there, we would not know about it. And because she notified us about it, right now we're sending an action alert to all our members in Nebraska saying, we want you to know that city council is meeting about this. They're introducing this bill in your legislative session in the state. We need to mobilize to make sure we stop this bill, because basically they're designating you, any freedom-loving American who's standing up for America's Judeo-Christian value system, as a hate group. So this is why it is important for you who are listening to this program and tell your friends about it, to join us as an activist, form a group, find out what you can do as an activist. Go to actforamerica.org and sign up to become an activist and become involved.
Now, one of the things that our city council in Spokane did, not Spokane Valley, but Spokane, is they actually did a resolution in support of the Council of American Islamic Relations. Now, it was great because a lot of ACT members in our community came out and protested that. But how is it across the rest of the country? Are a lot of city councils honoring organizations like CARE and honoring organizations like the North American Islamic Trust and others? Is that happening across the country, or is it only in isolated pockets in urban areas?
It is happening across the country, especially in very left states and in urban areas, because CARE is finding a lot of support. They are finding a lot of people who are on the left who hate all the policies that people like you and me and those who are listening to us right now stand for, and that is the protection of our Judeo-Christian principles and foundation and values, and that is the protection of our borders, our citizens. We want, the vetting of refugees, all those, strong national defense, respect for law and order. We stand for these values. These are American values. But CARE is finding home for those who hate America and are working to sabotage America. And it is sad that actually, Matt, you and I are discussing this in 2017, but this is reality. And so CARE is very organized. The Islamic lobby is very organized nationwide. And by the way, CARE is a front organization for the Muslim Brotherhood in America. CARE is actually designated as a terrorist organization by the UAE. Now, if the United Arab Emirates, who speak Arabic, who know CARE, designated them as a terrorist organization, why are we awarding them in our own community? But CARE is very organized, and the Muslim lobby working with CARE, basically CARE's members are very organized, and that's why we're trying to create a counter to CARE. Because if there is no resistance in the local communities, CARE people can do whatever they want to do, and that's why it's important to have local groups, local chapters, people coming up, and that's why we depend on group leaders to basically lead a team and say, okay, not under my watch. I'm going to get together my friends. I'm going to get together my Sunday school group. I'm going to get together my Bible study group, my Tea Party group, whatever it is. We're going to oppose them, but we've got to have groups on the ground to keep their eyes and ears open to find out what's happening in the community. And that's why citizen activism is so important.
Absolutely is why citizen activism is so important, because it's at the grassroots that this battle is going to be won. I really want to talk about immigration in the last few minutes that we have. Trump administration has been trying to do the right thing in many ways on the immigration front. What is your take on the immigration front, and what do you think we need to be doing, not just at the national level, but also at the state level?
Oh, my goodness. This is one of our biggest issues because, national immigration, this is how the terrorists are trying to exploit our system. and get into our system. This is exactly why we heard from all the top of our intelligence agencies that they are monitoring 1,000 ISIS operatives in America in all 50 states. Now, ISIS has already told us we want to infiltrate. We have already infiltrated the refugee population, and this is how we're going to come to the West, and this is how we're going to come to your communities. And that's how they are ending up in America. And this is why we are opposing just opening the floodgates to refugees wanting to come to America because, these poor Syrians, we want to bring them in, we want to give them homes. And as you can see, especially in northern states, you're having a lot of deposits of refugees coming deposited in your communities, coming from all over the world. That we do not want. We want to make sure we are vetting who is coming into the country. As a matter of fact, there's a bill in Congress right now by Congressman Babin. We worked with him on the bill, and we actually helped him get 90 sponsors for the bill, co-sponsors, that says basically why we must vet refugees before they come here. And you know, Matt, I am a legal immigrant to the United States. I immigrated here 30 years ago. And the magic word here is legal. People who do it by the book. I came to America. I spent my own money hiring an attorney to do my papers right. I paid out of my own pocket for all my physical tests that I had to take. I had to take a blood test. I had to be tested against tuberculosis, leprosy, every single medical test you can think of. And I hated needles, but I had to do it, and I had the luxury of paying for it out of my own pocket. I had to study a 2-inch thick book by the Daughters of the American Revolution on American history, and I had to pass an oral exam and a written exam about America's history, and I had to pass my exams with fluent English. These are the type of immigrants we want, immigrants like me. Right now we have immigrants who do not know anything about American history, who are not required to even speak English, who are basically they are criminals who broke the law that we are allowing into our country, and even talking about giving them amnesty. This is insane and offensive to immigrants like me who did everything by the book. And that's why we must control our borders. We must control who's coming into our country. We must redo our visa program so we can track who is in the country and whether or not they have overstayed their visa. And these are important issues for national security. This is not just an immigration issue. This is a national security issue.
Absolutely is a national security issue. And then the final thing I wanted to ask you about, you're really the expert on a lot of this stuff. Are there really Sharia law areas already in the United States of America?
Oh, my goodness, what a perfect question. Yes, there are. As a matter of fact, we have documented over 143 cases where Sharia law was used in 22 states in the United States instead of the Constitution of the United States. In 22 states, 143 cases. This is not only happening in Europe. This is happening in America. And this is why we wanted to build the firewalls by passing ALAC, American Laws for American Courts, to basically protect the country one state at a time. And this is why this issue is so important, because a lot of people might think, wow, this is never going to happen here. This is only happening in England, or this is only happening in Europe. Well, this is happening in America. And it is important that people wake up now and realize why we must protect our cities, why we must protect our communities, one state at a time. See, Europe did not have a resistance movement. We are creating a resistance movement in America. America has Act for America as the largest national security organization. And we are keeping a watchful eye over America and making sure that what happened in Europe will not happen in America.
So for the young people that are listening to the show today who may think, oh, you guys just sound like you hate Muslims, what would be your message to the young people particularly?
My goodness, we are protecting Muslims, passing laws that are anti-Sharia, protects women against female genital mutilation, protects women from being beaten, protects a woman from being robbed of her inheritance, protects women from having custody of their children. And people think this could never happen in America. Listen, there was a case in New Jersey a few years ago, where a woman went to the court asking the court for a restraining order against her husband because her husband was raping her up to 4 times a day and torturing her. The judge refused to give her protection order because her husband was a Muslim and he wanted to be judged under Sharia law. It took the appellate court 1 year to overrule the decision and give her the restraining order against her husband. Now, this happened in New Jersey, not in Libya, not in Pakistan, not in Iraq, but in New Jersey. So us passing laws like that protects Muslim women before it protects American women. I, as an American woman, as a Christian woman, I don't have to worry about my, I'm not genitally mutilating my daughters, or I have to worry about my parents genitally mutilating me. I don't have to worry about my husband beating me. I can take my husband to court. I don't have to worry about a divorce, losing custody of my children, because under Islamic law, a woman has no right to her children once they reach 6 years old. Once they reach 6 years old, they're the property of the father. The father can take them back to Afghanistan or to Jordan or to Lebanon or to Egypt. The mother will never see them again and has no right to seeing them again. A woman is not allowed to inherit. All the inheritance goes to the brothers. I mean, there are so many things. So we are protecting Muslim women much more than we are protecting non-Muslim women.
Well, if people want to get involved, once again, you got me fired up. I'm getting a rash of text messages from listeners already. People are getting fired up. If people want to get involved, again, where can they go to get involved? And also mention the rally once more for this weekend.
Absolutely. People can go to actforamerica.org, ACTFOR America.org, actforamerica.org. Sign up to join us. Become a member. Become an activist. Stand with us financially if you are able, at whatever level you can. Support us. We are the NRA of National Security, and we are mobilizing the nation. And this Saturday, we are having a virtual day of action / rally from 12 noon to 3 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. So you can watch it live and participate on our website, actforamerica.org. So join us. All roads lead to actforamerica.org. We need you with us.
Brigitte Gabriel, president of Act for America and author of They Must Be Stopped. Thank you very much for being on Patriot Radio with me today. I love it. Love everything you're doing. Keep up the fight.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. God bless. Well, check it out once again, Act for America. Get involved. There is a Spokane Act for America chapter. You can get involved. There's a Facebook page. You can message and get involved that way. Also, the rally that's going on this weekend, which is a virtual reality rally now because of all the death threats that came. In fact, yours truly was supposed to be speaking in Seattle this weekend, and it had to be canceled because of the overwhelming amount of death threats. Now, it's interesting that kind of goes against the whole idea of tolerance and free speech. And as Brigitte said, you have school teachers, people that should know far better that free speech is a cornerstone of America, the right to peaceably assemble and petition for redress of grievances. That's a cornerstone. Why would you create an atmosphere where no one could speak? Why would you create an atmosphere of intimidation? When, by the way, the left has been accusing good patriots, ranchers, farmers, loggers, manufacturing workers, all hardworking folks, of being the ones that are instigating division and violence. Isn't it actually divisive to try to shut down a rally? Isn't it actually divisive to say that we need to get rid of the U.S. Constitution? Isn't it actually divisive to say we're tolerant of everything except your view? Isn't it divisive to say that if you believe in the Bible, the right to bear arms, the right to life, that you're somehow a hateful human being? You see, what this is called psychologically is projection. The left will project onto everyone else how they really are themselves. These Antifa thugs are going to project onto everyone else how they really are themselves. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour with the U.S. Virgin Islands and this governor, Kenneth Mapp, signing the ability for the National Guard, and by the way, they don't have that ability under the Constitution, but saying that they could confiscate ammunition and guns because there's a hurricane? Understand what's happening here. There's going to be more and more excuses to disarm law-abiding citizens. You're seeing Antifa thugs show up at rallies with what look like rifles that are, in fact, in some cases, not all cases, but some cases, airsoft guns. Why would they do that? So when the order comes out, or the request from a mayor, for example, to ban the possession of all guns, they can say they're doing it both to the left and the right. That's why they do this kind of stuff. Understand the long game here. Ultimately, disarming law-abiding citizens, making it so hard to purchase ammunition or so expensive that it renders your right to bear arms effectively null and void. What's happening in the U.S. Virgin Islands is a test. It is a test of the resolve of Americans. It is a test to see whether people will say, no, that's not right. It is a test to see whether we will be able to say our rights come from God, not from man. And finally, I believe that it's a test of our national security. In this respect, that national security starts with every individual at home. And that the right to bear arms was one of the big reasons Japan didn't invade. Because there would have been a gun behind every blade of grass. The idea that well-armed, trained citizenry is far more responsive to terrorist attacks than waiting on our law enforcement, our peace officers that are spread so thin right now, that the individual on the ground can make a huge difference. I think it's a test of that ultimately. In all of these things that are happening, Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Irma, wildfires, North Korea, that is a test of whether we will put God back in the center of our lives so he can once again be at the center of our country. Will we turn to the Lord and not rely on ourselves? And understand that what I just said, those things are compatible. And that is how we defend freedom locally. This is Matt Shea. Thank you once again for listening to Patriot Radio. May God bless all of you, and may he make this generation the greatest one.